One of the strangest things about human behavior is how easy it becomes to predict people once you discover what controls them emotionally. Some people can be controlled with praise, others with rejection, others with attention, others simply by making them feel ignored. And most never notice it happening. They believe they are thinking independently while spending entire days reacting automatically to messages, opinions, criticism, social pressure, jealousy, ego, and the endless need to prove something to people who are never truly paying attention in the first place. If you observe carefully, you start noticing a pattern. The people who appear the most emotionally expressive are often the easiest to manipulate. Because when someone cannot control their reactions, other people eventually learn how to control them instead. Modern culture quietly encourages this. It rewards impulsive behavior and calls it authenticity. It rewards overexposure and calls it confidence. It rewards emotional reactions because reactive people are easier to influence, easier to distract, and easier to keep psychologically dependent on external validation. But highly intelligent people tend to move differently. Not louder, not colder, more deliberate. They understand that every unnecessary reaction gives something away. Attention, clarity, emotional stability, sometimes even dignity. Nearly 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor came to a disturbing realization while surrounded by war, betrayal, and political chaos. A person who cannot govern themselves will eventually be governed by everything around them. In this video, we'll explore 6 things highly intelligent people never do, even though most people repeat them every day without realizing how much power they lose each time they do. 1. Highly intelligent people never need to win every argument. A professor once performed a strange experiment in one of his university classes. He divided the room into 2 groups and gave them a controversial topic to debate. But before the discussion began, he secretly instructed one group to do something unusual. No matter what happened, they were never allowed to raise their voice, interrupt, or rush to defend themselves emotionally. At first, the second group appeared stronger, more confident, more dominant. They spoke faster, reacted instantly, and attacked every opposing point with intensity. But after 20 minutes, something unexpected happened. The emotional group slowly lost control of the room. They interrupted more, listened less, repeated themselves, became visibly frustrated anytime someone disagreed with them. Meanwhile, the calmer group started influencing the discussion without forcing it. The more emotionally disciplined they remained, the more credibility they gained. Afterward, the professor explained the real purpose of the experiment. The person who loses emotional control first, he said, usually loses influence first. That observation explains something most people never realize about arguments. Very few arguments are actually about truth. Most are about ego protection. People do not argue because they are searching for wisdom. They argue because disagreement feels like a threat to their identity. The moment someone challenges their opinion, they experience it psychologically as disrespect. And once ego becomes involved, intelligence often disappears from the conversation completely. You can see this pattern everywhere now. Someone gets corrected in a meeting, and suddenly the discussion is no longer about ideas. It becomes about pride. A simple disagreement between friends quietly turns into resentment that lasts for years. Complete strangers online spend entire evenings arguing with people they secretly do not even respect. And the strange part is, many people mistake emotional intensity for intelligence. But highly intelligent people understand something dangerous. The need to constantly prove yourself is often evidence that you are not fully secure in yourself. Because secure people do not feel psychologically threatened by every disagreement. They can listen without collapsing emotionally. They can stay calm without feeling weak. They can let other people misunderstand them without treating it like war. That ability is rare now. Modern culture trains people to react immediately to everything. Every opinion demands a response. Every criticism feels personal. Silence has become uncomfortable because many people secretly fear what it says about their status, importance, or control. But emotionally intelligent people understand that reacting instantly gives away power. The easiest person to manipulate is the person who cannot tolerate emotional discomfort. Once someone learns what triggers your ego, your anger, or your insecurity, controlling your behavior becomes easy. And this is why highly intelligent people become extremely careful about what they emotionally react to. A Roman emperor once came to a realization that still feels uncomfortable today. If another person can control your emotions whenever they choose, they are controlling part of your mind. Think about how many people unknowingly surrender control like this every day. A comment ruins their mood. A disagreement ruins their peace. A stranger's opinion ruins their confidence. And over time, they become emotionally exhausted from constantly defending themselves against the world. But highly intelligent people move differently. They understand that not every opinion deserves engagement. Not every insult deserves response. And not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes silence is not weakness. It is self-control. Because winning an argument rarely changes people, but losing control of yourself always changes you. 2. Highly intelligent people never reveal every emotion they feel. A man once admitted during a podcast interview that the worst mistake of his life happened at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not because he committed a crime, not because he lost money, but because he sent a message while emotional. He said he had spent years building a relationship with someone he deeply cared about. But one night, after feeling ignored for several hours, his mind started creating stories. Maybe she was losing interest. Maybe she was talking to someone else. Maybe he was being disrespected. Instead of sleeping, he kept replaying those thoughts until they became emotionally real. And sometime after midnight, he sent a long message filled with accusation, frustration, and emotion. The next morning, he regretted almost every word. Not because his feelings were fake, but because temporary emotions had been treated like permanent truth. That is one of the most dangerous psychological habits people develop without realizing it. They assume that because they feel something intensely, it must also be accurate. Highly intelligent people learn very early that emotions are real, but they are not always reliable. Fear can distort perception. Anger can create false certainty. Loneliness can make unhealthy attachment feel like love. Ego can disguise itself as self-respect. Yet most people never pause long enough to question what their emotions are doing to their thinking in the moment. Instead, they obey immediately. They speak immediately. React immediately. Reveal immediately. And modern culture encourages this behavior constantly. People are told that suppressing emotion is unhealthy, which is true. But what nobody explains is that uncontrolled emotional expression can become equally destructive. There is a difference between processing emotions and unloading them onto everyone around you. Highly intelligent people understand that difference. They do not reveal every emotion the moment they feel it because they know emotions change faster than consequences do. An angry sentence spoken in 10 seconds can damage trust built over 10 years. And perhaps the strangest part is this. People often feel most honest during emotional moments while actually becoming least objective. Think about how many terrible decisions are made by people who were absolutely convinced they were following their feelings. Quitting jobs impulsively, ending relationships dramatically, destroying friendships over temporary insecurity, publicly exposing private emotions they later wish they had protected. Emotional intensity creates the illusion of clarity, but clarity and intensity are not the same thing. This is why highly intelligent people often appear calmer than everyone else during emotional situations. Not because they feel less, but because they understand the danger of reacting while emotionally flooded. A Roman philosopher once observed, that the greatest freedom a person can develop is the space between feeling and action. Most people never build that space. Their emotions arrive and immediately become behavior. That is why so many people today feel emotionally exhausted. They're constantly leaking energy through unnecessary reactions, oversharing, emotional impulsiveness, and the endless pressure to externalize every feeling they experience. But emotionally disciplined people move differently. When they feel anger, they wait. When they feel insecurity, they observe it first. When they feel hurt, they resist the urge to immediately transfer that pain onto someone else, because they understand something most people learn too late. Not every emotion deserves expression. Some emotions are meant to be examined quietly before they are trusted publicly. And once you begin practicing that kind of restraint, something strange starts happening. You stop becoming emotionally predictable. People can no longer control you as easily through guilt, attention, rejection, or provocation because you are no longer reacting automatically to every internal storm. That is real emotional intelligence, not the absence of feeling, but the ability to feel deeply without surrendering control of yourself in the process. 3. Highly intelligent people never feel the need to explain their value. There is a moment many people experience at least once in life, though few talk about it honestly. You spend several minutes explaining yourself to someone, and halfway through the conversation, you suddenly realize they were never trying to understand you in the first place. They were evaluating you, your choices, your lifestyle, your success, your boundaries. And the more you explain, the smaller you begin to feel. Highly intelligent people notice this dynamic earlier than most. That is why they become very careful about who they seek understanding from. Because one of the quietest forms of emotional exhaustion is constantly trying to convince people to see your worth correctly. A surprising number of people spend years doing this without realizing it. They explain why they left a toxic relationship, why they changed careers, why they no longer tolerate certain behavior, why they prefer solitude, why they don't live like everyone else around them. At first, it seems harmless, mature even. But over time, something dangerous begins happening psychologically. Their confidence becomes dependent on being understood, and once that happens, other people's opinions quietly gain control over their identity. Highly intelligent people avoid this trap, not because they are arrogant, but because they understand a difficult truth about human nature. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you because it makes them feel more comfortable about remaining who they are. That realization changes the way you move through life. You stop over-explaining your boundaries to people who benefit from you having none. You stop defending your growth to people uncomfortable with change. You stop trying to earn respect from people who only value you when you stay small, agreeable, or emotionally available for their convenience. And perhaps most importantly, you stop confusing visibility with validation. Modern culture constantly pressures people to explain themselves publicly. Everyone is expected to justify their decisions, announce their emotions, and expose their personal lives for approval. Silence now makes insecure people suspicious because they have become addicted to constant self-disclosure. But highly intelligent people understand something strange. The more valuable something is, the more carefully it tends to be protected. People protect their money, their homes, their passwords, their private conversations. Yet many reveal their deepest insecurities, goals, emotional wounds, and personal struggles to people who have not earned psychological access to them. And then they wonder why they feel emotionally drained afterward. Not everyone deserves transparency. That idea sounds harsh in a world obsessed with radical openness, but emotional boundaries are often what protect mental clarity. A Roman philosopher once warned against living as though your entire inner world belongs to public opinion. He understood that constantly seeking external validation slowly weakens a person's relationship with themselves. Because eventually, you stop asking, "What feels true to me?" and start asking, how will this be perceived? That shift quietly changes people. Some stop pursuing meaningful goals because they fear judgment. Others remain in relationships that no longer fulfill them because they fear being misunderstood. Some even build entire personalities around social approval until they no longer know which parts are authentic and which parts were performed for acceptance. Highly intelligent people become aware of this pattern and begin moving differently. They speak carefully, reveal selectively, and learn to tolerate being misunderstood by people committed to shallow judgment. That is not insecurity. It is psychological maturity. Because confidence is not the ability to make everyone understand you. Confidence is the ability to remain connected to your values even when some people never will. And once you stop needing universal approval, something unexpected happens. You become harder to manipulate. Guilt stops working as easily. Social pressure weakens. Attention loses its addictive pull. Because your identity is no longer built entirely from other people's reactions. And that may be one of the clearest signs of intelligence in the modern world. The ability to know your worth without constantly needing to announce it. 4. Highly intelligent people never rush important decisions. One of the most expensive mistakes people make in life is believing urgency always means importance. It doesn't. In fact, some of the worst decisions human beings make happen under emotional pressure disguised as urgency. A man once described how he lost nearly everything after making a decision in less than 10 minutes. He had been working at the same company for years when one afternoon his manager criticized him publicly during a meeting. Humiliated and angry, he walked out, drove home, and sent an email resigning immediately. At that moment, it felt powerful. For a few hours, he felt proud of himself. Free, even. But by the following week, reality arrived. No backup plan, no stable income, no clear direction. And slowly he realized something painful. He had not made a strategic decision. He had made an emotional escape. Highly intelligent people understand a principle that most people ignore. A decision made in emotional intensity often solves a temporary feeling while creating a long-term problem. Yet modern culture rewards impulsiveness constantly. People admire dramatic exits, sudden announcements, instant reactions. They confuse emotional certainty with wisdom because urgency creates the illusion that action must happen immediately. But intelligent people know that clarity and urgency are rarely the same thing. That is why they become extremely cautious during emotionally charged moments. Not passive, not indecisive, deliberate. They understand that emotions distort perception in subtle ways. Anger narrows perspective. Fear exaggerates danger. Excitement hides consequences. Ego creates false confidence. And perhaps most dangerously, emotional intensity tricks people into believing they are seeing reality clearly when they are actually seeing reality temporarily. This is why highly intelligent people often delay major decisions until emotion settles. Not because they are weak, because they know a calm mind can see what an emotional mind cannot. Think about how many lives change permanently because someone acted too quickly. People marry too quickly because loneliness feels like connection. People destroy relationships too quickly because pride feels like self-respect. People trust too quickly because attention feels like sincerity. People quit too quickly because discomfort feels unbearable in the moment. But intelligent people train themselves to separate temporary emotion from permanent consequence. That skill becomes incredibly valuable in a world designed to pressure immediate reactions. Social media accelerates this problem constantly. Everyone is expected to respond instantly, choose sides instantly, form opinions instantly, and make decisions publicly before they have fully processed anything privately. As a result, many people lose the ability to sit with uncertainty. And that is dangerous. Because the inability to tolerate uncertainty often creates impulsive behavior. A Roman emperor once wrote that calmness is not weakness, but proof that reason still governs the mind. He understood that emotional self-control was not simply moral discipline, it was strategic protection against self-destruction. Highly intelligent people apply this principle everywhere. When angry, they pause. When excited, they slow down. When pressured, they observe carefully before committing themselves emotionally or financially. They know that manipulative people often create artificial urgency because rushed minds are easier to influence. Think about how often modern life pressures people with phrases like, "Act now," "Don't miss your chance," "You need to respond immediately." Urgency bypasses reflection, and reflection is where intelligence becomes visible. This is why emotionally disciplined people often appear unusually patient compared to everyone around them. They are not moving slowly because they lack confidence. They are moving carefully because they understand consequences, and over time, this creates a completely different kind of life. While emotionally reactive people repeatedly create chaos through impulsive choices, intelligent people quietly avoid unnecessary disasters before they begin. That is one of the least visible but most powerful forms of intelligence. The ability to pause long enough to recognize when emotion is trying to make a decision that wisdom should make instead. 5. Highly intelligent people never stay in environments that slowly destroy them. One of the most dangerous things about unhealthy environments is that they rarely feel destructive in the beginning. They feel familiar. That is why so many people remain in places, relationships, and social circles that quietly damage their mental clarity for years before they fully recognize what is happening. A woman once described how she realized her group of friends had been affecting her psychologically without her noticing it. At first, nothing seemed extreme. Nobody was openly abusive. Nobody was aggressively toxic. But every conversation revolved around gossip, negativity, criticism, and subtle competition. Whenever someone succeeded, the room became uncomfortable. Whenever someone tried to improve their life, the energy changed instantly. Ambition was mocked. Optimism sounded naive. Peacefulness looked suspicious. After spending enough time around that environment, she noticed something disturbing. She had started thinking like them, not intentionally. Gradually, her motivation became weaker. Her thinking became more cynical. Even her internal dialogue became harsher. And perhaps the strangest part was this: she did not notice the change while it was happening. Highly intelligent people understand something most people underestimate. Human beings adapt emotionally to their environment far faster than they realize. Spend enough time around chaos, and chaos starts feeling normal. Spend enough time around emotionally reactive people, and eventually your own nervous system begins mirroring their instability. Spend enough time around people who constantly complain, criticize, gossip, and resent others, and slowly your mind begins filtering reality through the same emotional lens. That is why intelligent people become extremely selective about who and what they allow repeated access to their attention. Because environments shape identity quietly. A person may believe they are independent while unconsciously absorbing the emotional habits, fears, limitations, and worldview of the people surrounding them every day. This is especially dangerous because emotional environments are contagious. Anxious people spread anxiety. Bitter people spread bitterness. Chronically angry people normalize emotional tension. And over time, many people stop asking, "Is this environment healthy for me?" Instead, they ask, "How much discomfort can I tolerate before leaving?" That question changes lives in the worst possible way. Because the longer a person stays in emotionally unhealthy environments, the more their nervous system adapts to survival mode. Eventually, peace starts feeling unfamiliar. Silence feels uncomfortable. Healthy relationships feel boring because the brain became addicted to emotional unpredictability. Highly intelligent people notice this pattern early. That is why they are willing to disappoint people in order to protect their mental clarity. They leave environments that constantly drain them emotionally. They distance themselves from people addicted to conflict, and they stop trying to save relationships built entirely on guilt, chaos, or emotional dependency. This does not mean they stop caring about people. It means they understand an uncomfortable truth. You cannot build a peaceful mind while remaining committed to environments that destroy your peace daily. A Roman philosopher once warned that people unconsciously become similar to whatever they repeatedly surround themselves with. He understood that character is not formed only through intention, but through exposure. Modern life makes this even more dangerous because exposure is now constant. People absorb negativity not only through relationships, but through news cycles, social media outrage, endless comparison, and digital environments designed to keep the nervous system emotionally overstimulated. Most people never disconnect long enough to realize how heavily their environment is shaping their thoughts. But highly intelligent people become aware of this slowly, invisible influence. And once they do, they begin protecting their attention the same way they would protect their physical health. Because they understand something most people learn too late. Not every battle destroys you immediately. Some destroy you gradually, by convincing you to live disconnected from peace for so long that dysfunction starts feeling like personality. And that may be one of the clearest signs of intelligence in the modern world. The ability to recognize when an environment is changing who you are before it changes you permanently. 6. Highly intelligent people never stop examining themselves. One of the most unsettling experiences a person can have is realizing they have been repeating the same emotional pattern for years without noticing it. Different people, different places, different situations, but somehow the same outcome keeps returning, the same arguments, the same fears, the same self-sabotage, the same emptiness appearing in different forms. Most people blame circumstances when this happens. Highly intelligent people become curious instead, because eventually they understand a difficult truth. If the same pain keeps repeating in different environments, the pattern may no longer be outside you. That realization requires a level of honesty many people spend their entire lives avoiding. It is much easier to believe, everyone around me is the problem. It is far more uncomfortable to ask, what part of my own behavior keeps creating this outcome? And this is where intelligent people separate themselves from the crowd. Most people observe the world constantly, but rarely observe themselves. They analyze other people's flaws, other people's motives, other people's mistakes. Meanwhile, their own unconscious habits continue operating in the background without interruption. Highly intelligent people develop the opposite habit. They study themselves carefully, not with self-hatred, not with obsession, with awareness. They pay attention to what triggers them emotionally. They notice recurring insecurities. They question why certain situations drain them while others energize them. And perhaps most importantly, they become suspicious of their own excuses. Because one of the greatest forms of self-deception is believing that self-awareness automatically creates change. It does not. Many people know exactly what destroys their peace and still continue repeating it. They know certain relationships are unhealthy. They know certain habits weaken them mentally. They know certain behaviors come from ego, insecurity, or fear. And yet they continue. Why? Because awareness without discipline changes nothing. That is why highly intelligent people do not only examine themselves emotionally, they examine themselves behaviorally. They ask difficult questions most people avoid. Why do I need validation so often? Why do I fear silence? Why do I become uncomfortable when I'm alone with my thoughts? Why do I keep seeking approval from people I do not even respect? Those questions are uncomfortable because they threaten identity. And identity is what most people protect at all costs. A Roman emperor who spent years journaling privately once wrote that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. He understood that a person's inner world is not shaped suddenly, but gradually through repeated mental patterns that eventually become personality. Modern life makes self-examination even harder because distraction is now endless. Most people never sit alone long enough to hear their own unresolved thoughts clearly. The moment discomfort appears, they reach for stimulation, phones, noise, entertainment, conversation, scrolling, constant distraction, anything to avoid confronting themselves directly. But highly intelligent people eventually recognize something dangerous. A person who cannot sit quietly with themselves often becomes dependent on external distraction to escape internal confusion. And over time, that dependency weakens clarity, emotional stability, and self-control. This is why intelligent people intentionally create moments of reflection. They slow down enough to examine their reactions. They notice patterns before those patterns become identity. And they understand that without honest self-observation, personal growth becomes impossible, because you cannot change what you refuse to confront. Perhaps that is why genuine intelligence often looks quieter with age. The older, truly self-aware people become, the less interested they are in performing wisdom for others. Their attention shifts inward. They become more focused on mastering their own mind than controlling how they appear to the world. And that may be the highest form of intelligence, the willingness to see yourself clearly, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Because the moment a person becomes honest about themselves, real transformation finally becomes possible. Most people stay reactive their entire lives. One of the saddest realities about human behavior is that many people never truly make decisions consciously. They simply react. They react to criticism, to attention, to rejection, to loneliness, to fear, to whatever emotion becomes strongest in the moment. And after enough years, those reactions slowly become personality. That is why so many people feel trapped in cycles they cannot explain. They think they are choosing their lives freely while unconsciously repeating the same emotional patterns over and over again. The same arguments, the same impulsive decisions, the same toxic relationships, the same need for approval from people who were never capable of giving them peace in the first place. Highly intelligent people eventually recognize something most people never stop to question. If your emotions can constantly be controlled by external events, then your inner world does not truly belong to you yet. That realization changes everything. Because real intelligence is not the ability to impress people with knowledge. It is the ability to remain conscious while the rest of the world operates automatically. Most people spend their lives reacting first and reflecting later. But emotionally disciplined people reverse that pattern. They pause before speaking, observe before trusting, think before reacting, and slowly they stop giving the outside world unlimited access to their mind. That is why self-mastery feels rare today, not because it is impossible, but because remaining conscious in a world designed to trigger unconscious reactions has become one of the hardest psychological skills a person can develop, and perhaps one of the most valuable. If there is one thing truly intelligent people understand, it is this. Your life is shaped less by the big moments and more by the small reactions you repeat every day. The way you respond to criticism, the way you handle emotion, the people you allow close to your mind, the thoughts you practice when nobody is watching. Over time, these invisible habits quietly become your character. And perhaps that is the deeper message behind Stoicism, not becoming emotionless, not becoming distant from the world, but learning how to remain steady in a world constantly trying to pull you away from yourself. Because peace is not something people accidentally discover. It is something they protect through awareness, discipline, and honest self-observation. So after watching this video, don't try to change your entire life overnight. Instead, begin smaller. Notice one reaction you need to control better, one environment draining your energy, one habit quietly weakening your mind. Real transformation often begins with awareness before action. And now I'd love to hear from you. Which of these 6 habits do you think affects modern people the most? And which one are you personally trying to improve in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Someone reading your experience may realize they are not struggling alone.